Hey guys, welcome back to What the Fat. Today I have on a badass guy who is an Olympian, someone who is now a really good friend. We met actually through a mutual friend of mine from high school, Jess Hurtado. But now he's staying with me for a week and we're going to dive into some of his journey. James Ellington, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Oh man, so tell us a little bit, your story's wild and I'm excited for people to hear it. Tell us a little bit about growing up. Did you grow up saying, I'm going to be a fast MF? Or are you just like, was sprinting always your thing? Or was it like, it's just, I realized I was fast and that's what I kind of geared towards?
It was a bit of both, to be honest. So when I remember around 3 or 4 years old, I was watching the Seoul Olympics in 1988, ages ago. And my mum was always an athletics fan. And Ben Johnson, because my mum's Canadian, was running. That was when he won, obviously. And I just remember seeing it on the TV and thinking, this is something that I want to do. I didn't know why. It just really attracted me. And kind of growing up as an infant, going into like primary school, I was just naturally quick. And it would just happen to be that this one thing that I wanted to do, I was pretty good at. And that's where it all kind of started for me.
And what did you play other sports when you were young?
Yeah, I did. So when I was around 9, 10, my mum tried to push me into tennis. That didn't fit with me. I was too powerful and I weren't coordinated enough. Also rugby. So, it's like the English version of NFL. And I was really good at it. But I knew that my fate wasn't in my hands. So it was between that and track and field. I knew that if I was fast on a day, I'd control my fate. And I didn't want to be in a situation where I could be on form and we don't win, or vice versa, I could be not in good shape and we win. And I feel like I'm getting kind of fate recognition. I'm pretty tough on myself like that.
Right. And I think that's unique because a lot of people, I think people can already start to tell a lot about your mindset where you're like, hey, I want to be in control of my own destiny. You don't want to leave it up to someone else. And you do some things that are team aspects with like relay and stuff like that that we'll dive into. But that's powerful because I think a lot of times people just try and lean on the shoulder of someone else and are like, oh, we're part of a football team that's dominant, but they really have no contribution to it.
Right.
So did you, growing up like in high school, did you dominate? Were people like, that guy's going to be special? Were you really good at track and field?
Yeah. I was always the fastest in my class or the fastest in the year group at school. And there was a few times where you'd get the odd freak that would come in and challenge me. And I'd think, I'm supposed to be the fastest, right? But I was always pretty good in school. But everybody around me wasn't too sure whether I could take this to another level, because being fast in school is different to being the fastest guy in the country or whatever it is. And it wasn't until kind of I started with a track and field club that I realized that actually I do have some potential.
That's awesome. And so out of high school, where did you go to college? Where'd you go?
Yeah, so I left school. To be honest, school it wasn't for me. The school at the time, the school I went to, I was distracted. I was talking a lot with my friends, and I was sharp. I was on the ball, but I was just a chatterbox, and sports was my thing. I was kind of I had this, I don't know if it was arrogance or belief. I think for me it was belief, but the teachers used to think I was arrogant because they say, James, you're not focused. You got so much potential. Blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to the Olympics. And I genuinely believed it, yeah? And they'd be like, you're not going to no Olympics. And I used to tell them all the time, it doesn't matter, I don't need to because I'm going to the Olympics. So it was a bit of arrogance, but it was real belief for me. And yeah, I kind of came out of high school and I went to college for maybe 4 or 5 months, but it just wasn't for me. I know everybody's kind of pushed into kind of going the educational route, which I understand, but I've always been this person that there's no point in wasting and pushing my energy into something that you truly don't want to do because you're going to waste your time. So I dropped out. I had one job, which was Papa John's for an hour and a half. And then again, I came back and I said, this isn't for me, man. And my mum was like, look, Jay, you need to get a job. And I was like, look, don't worry. I'm gonna go to the Olympics. And she was like, oh, okay. And it kind of went on from there.
Love it. So let's build up to the journey of the Olympics. So let's talk a little bit about some of your competitions, right? You're a two-time British champion, two-time world champion, right? Olympian. Take us through. I think it was up to Rio.
Yeah.
Take us through that. Like, what were some of the big events that you did, and like, how did you do in them?
All right. So kind of, I was a promising junior. I went to like major world junior championships. I got European gold medals and stuff through the junior ranking. And then I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out of athletics for my early 20s. And it wasn't until kind of the Olympics in London was announced, I was like, right, I need to be there. But right now, I'm not focused enough to be there. I knew that I wasn't on the path to get into the Olympics at the time. And I was only training 3 days a week, which was crazy. So I didn't realize at the time I was coaching kids part-time and I was training part-time. And obviously when the Olympics landed in London, I was 26 years old. So some would say people are well into their career by that time. I was only training 3 days a week and weren't really focused and serious. So leading up to that competition that's a whole different story. But from the Olympics, I've been to London, I've been to 3 World Championships, I've been to Rio Olympics. I've managed to be lucky enough to come out with 2 European gold medals, a couple national titles. So it's been an experience for sure. But I think the experiences around my athletics are even more interesting, which is crazy. So,
right. People are like, how can I get crazier than that?
Yeah.
But you, growing up, like even from that time, 26, and then we'll talk about some of the stuff that happened, but you've always been looked at as like the underdog, right? Like people, even with some of your teams, some of your organizations, were just like, you've always been looked at and been like kind of like the brushed off guy. Like, yeah, if he makes it, he makes it, but like he's brushed off. How does that fire you up? Like, how does that happen? And kind of like, what does that allow you to do? Like, what does that drive you more? Does that like
for
beat
sure,
you down?
for sure? I always felt like the yard dog. Like I'd be in the doghouse out in the garden where everybody else was in the house warm. But at the same time, I'm glad it happened now because adversity can breed success. It doesn't always breed success, but if you can kind of go through the motions and get through the storm, you can come out on the other side and be in a different headspace to everybody else. So for some reason, through my career and even through life in general, I've always been the kind of underdog, which at the time you look at it like, oh, this isn't fair. But now I'm thankful for it. So for example, kind of in the American track and field system, it's always, right, first 3 across the line, don't matter who it is, they're going for the team, right? And in the UK, there's criteria. So it's kind of reserved for the people that they want to be on the team. So I've always had to go to the national championships and make sure I come top 2 with the standard to make the team. Because if I don't come top 2 and I come 3rd or 4th, James isn't going. Whereas there's other athletes that might not even attend the national championships because they're injured. And, oh, you know what, he was injured, but he's in shape and we're going to take him anyway. So things like that, it's always kind of been against me, but it's made me stronger.
For sure. And let's talk a little bit about sponsorships, because I want to get your insight of like sponsorships, like kind of as an athlete itself, because you see this all the time just across the field in athletics, where like a lot of times sponsorships come and people will just throw some free apparel and people will jump all over and be like, now you're a XYZ sponsored athlete. What's been your experience, one, with sponsorships, and then tell us a little bit about how you literally changed the game on the whole sponsorship game.
Yeah. So with regards to sponsorship, I've been pretty unlucky, to be honest. For example, 2016 Rio Olympics, I was standing on the start line of the blue ribbon event with no sponsor, right? And I'm thinking, this is crazy. Come on, Jay. Like, you've run sub 10 this year. You run 10.04. Like, what's going on? But again, with athletes in general, I think maybe it might be different in other parts of the world, but in the UK, we're so happy to get free kit. And I'm just like, look, once you're a professional athlete and you're an adult, the kit isn't feeding you, it's not paying your bills, right? And athletes go in hard, day in, day out, with no guarantees. So when they get to that sort of level, you'd expect that, you know what, you've earned whatever you're going to earn. And that's it. But it's not the case. But I've always kind of been a non-traditional kind of person. So going back to 2012, before the Olympic Games in London, I was coaching kids 3 times a week and training 3 times a week. And I was thinking, you know what? I've got no sponsor. I've got no income apart from my coaching. How can I get the sponsorship that I need so I can train for the Olympics and make the Olympic team? So I went and sat down with a PR company called Third City, a lady called Jill who owns it. She's a really close person to me. She's kind of like my godmother. And we were sitting around the table brainstorming, and I kind of just threw it out there. I said, I'm going to end up having to sell myself on eBay. Kind of a bit like a joke. But these PR gurus, they're like, great idea. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So they put a massive press release together. They sent it out to all the local or national newspapers and media outlets. And within 2 weeks, I was sitting on the BBC Red Couch, auctioning my sponsorship rights for anybody who wanted to bid. And yeah, it was crazy. We had a massive response. I was all over the news for the next 2 weeks, saying that if I get this sponsorship, I'm going to be national champion. At the time, I'd never won any national championship. So all the other athletes are probably looking, thinking, where's this young guy going with this? Right. But at the same time, I knew that if I put this pressure on my shoulders, I'm going to have to perform. So I was thinking, right, this is kind of a real motivator for me to perform.
And you did.
And I did. I did.
So you're the first person ever, I think, to ever like auction off their sponsorship on eBay.
Yes.
That's insane.
Correct.
Talk about thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because I think a lot of times people are afraid to bet on the underdog, right? Mm-hmm. Like you'd be a prime case. Like if someone would have came in at that time and not only been with you through what we'll talk about here in a little bit, but now where you're at and where you're going, like imagine someone taking that bet on you then, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But people are afraid of it, and that's why you're destined for great things, right? Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the big elephant in the room, and that's your accident. Can you walk us through? So you're at ultimately the height of your career, and tell us a little bit about what happened.
So this was going after 2016 Olympics. I had the best year of my career. I literally changed events that year to the 100 meters from the 200. I was having a great season. I didn't perform well at the Olympics, but I was excited for 2017 because I knew what was to come. And we was on a training camp in Tenerife. So literally it couldn't happen in a worse place, right? And I remember finishing my last training session. It was a great session I had. And I was like, right, I'm in good shape. Everyone was talking about, well, James is getting out of the blocks. This is because it's not my thing getting out of the blocks, right? Mm-hmm. And a training partner of mine at the time decided to rent a motorcycle. And he was like, I'm going to go and see the volcano. Do you want to come? And I was like, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And obviously, yeah, exactly, that old chestnut. And then on the way back from the volcano, I just remember seeing headlights. And we had a head-on collision with a car. And carnage, all hell broke loose. Broke my leg, broke my ankle, broke my pelvis, smashed myself to pieces. And that's kind of, that was the last time I stepped on the track was Rio 2016, and I haven't been back on the track. Well, actually, I have, tell a lie. 2019, I competed for my first time, but competitively, I haven't been back on since.
That's great. So did your training partner get hit too?
Yeah, he was riding.
Gee, did he have a similar injury?
Yeah, so to my knowledge, he damaged his pelvis massively as well. But other than that, he got off lightly. He didn't break his legs or anything like that. So it was kind of like...
So you got the brunt of it. You got the brunt of it. So you literally go from being at the height of your career to in a hospital, and doctors are telling you may never walk again.
Yeah. Well, initially they thought they was gonna lose my leg because they were scared of compartment syndrome, and obviously the leg was in pieces. And I remember the teammates coming in and looking at me like in horror, thinking this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to an athlete, which I would have thought at the time as well. But I was just like, you know what, if my leg comes off, then I'll be the fastest Paralympian. That's genuinely how I thought, which it sounds crazy, I know, and it's not for the cameras, but maybe it was a defense mechanism to keep myself on the positive road, right? And the doctors were like, well, his career's done for sure. We think you're probably going to struggle to even walk again because the injuries were so severe, and the trauma inside me was so bad that they thought I'd be walking with a limp, or definitely not even training again. And I was like, nah, that's not happening.
And so you got, like, there are pictures, and there's going to be a documentary coming out about all of this, but there are pictures from you. What was what are you sitting at now? You're at 184 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
What were you at then? Like, when you came out of the hospital, you looked like a completely different human being. Like, what was your weight at around, roughly?
Well, as I'm British, I could tell you in kilos. So I crashed at 81 kilos, and I came in the hospital in 69 kilos, which is super lightweight. So I lost all my muscle.
Yeah, you're super lean as it is, and then to lose that much weight.
Yeah, I was just a skeleton with some skin on it. So.
Jeez. And then give us a little bit of, like, what's that rebuilding process like? How long did it take for you? And you have an extremely supportive woman at home, your missus. She's incredible.
Yeah.
She was there kind of along the journey as well.
Hell yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that process is like. How long did it take for you to, like, get up and start walking?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was obviously a super tough process. It was kind of, after I left the hospital, I was initially in a wheelchair for 6 weeks. So they thought I'd been in a wheelchair for maybe 12 to 16 weeks. I was in the wheelchair for 6 weeks, and during that time I couldn't do anything apart from roll around literally and lay in bed. But I was like, right, you know what? I need to start this early, because if I'm looking to get back where I want to get back to, I can't kind of sit around and just let fate take me there. So from the very beginning, I remember falling out of my chair on purpose onto the floor and trying to do a press up. And obviously, because I'd lost all my muscle and everything else, this was a guy that had gone from being able to knock out 50, 60, 70 press ups easy to struggling to do one. So I'm thinking, Jesus, what's going on here? Shaking, sweating. So I was like, right, one press up, get back in the chair. The next day I'll try again. Within a few days I got to like 3 or 4 press ups. And that was kind of the whole rebuilding process. It was me doing press ups out of my wheelchair, then going on to pull ups. So I can only do upper body stuff at the time, right? And then once I was out the wheelchair and I was on crutches, the doctors didn't really want me walking around because the pelvis was plated together. But after 6 weeks in the chair, they knew it was probably strong enough. The problem then was my leg, because I had a compound fracture. So all the pressure that I was putting on through my leg, it was giving me super pain. And I was going to rehabilitation in central London 5 times a week. And my house was, I'd say, 1.5 miles from the station. So originally, the first week or so, I was getting cabs, taxis from my house to the station, train to rehab. Then I'd have to get the taxi from the rehab back to the station, then so on, back to home. But I thought, you know what? I'm gonna have to cut that out as well. I'm gonna put myself through the pain, and I'm gonna to knit the muscle, to knit the bone faster. I knew there had to be kind of some sort of pressure going through it. So I started walking 1.5 miles from my house to the train station. And sometimes it would take me like an hour, because I was literally limping. And my missus was telling me, look, Jay, just stop putting you. And I was like, I'm not a sadist. I'm not doing it because I like it, but I knew it was a necessary evil to get back faster. So I'm walking every day to the station 1.5 miles. I don't even walk that much when I'm not injured, right? So I'm pushing this leg through the limits every day, pain. And I think that's kind of what got me back onto my feet a lot quicker, because, yeah, just putting myself through the ringer.
And at this time, like, everyone's doubting you, saying there's no shot you're going to come back. I know there was some stuff with the British athletics. They were like, see ya, don't want to be ya, don't, like, good luck, but don't come back, sort of thing. And that was, like, for someone to power through that, it kind of is like what you grew up with. You grew up with the underdog mentality of, like, everyone's dropping me anyway. Every person that you knew was just like, screw it. Like, this James isn't coming back. But you're doing shit like that, where you're walking to the station and you're like, I'm gonna come back. And so when did you start to know? When did you start to really build the belief, the confidence to go, you know what, like, I'm gonna make a run at this. Like, I'm gonna be running. I'm gonna be sprinting. And, like, when did that really hit for you?
Well, I believed it from the very beginning when I was in hospital, but when it clicked for me, actually, well, I can do this, was probably when I first started jogging. So it was like kind of the crutches came off. I had a little bit of a limp, but I started jogging with a limp, and I started on the kind of the treadmill. When I was on crutches, I was underwater doing aqua jogging and stuff, but I couldn't do it outside. So as soon as I was able to run on the treadmill, I was like, well, if I can walk, I can run, and if I can run, I can sprint. And that's when I just started really going to town with whatever I could do. Getting in the gym, if I couldn't run enough, I'd be in the gym squatting, and just working around, adapting.
And then you had something happen because you were in the gym, and I remember you were squatting. And then what happened? Because you have plates and screws inside of your pelvis.
Yeah.
And you were squatting a pretty heavy amount. Like it was impressive to watch.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy. I was telling Jess, I'm like, this is the same guy that you sent me that was in a bed. What happened when you were squatting that one time?
So I was in the gym. It's funny because the filming team, it was the one session they came down. Right?
Of course.
And they got it on camera as well, so it's going to be on the film probably.
Wow.
Or whatever they're going to put out. So I'm squatting. I had 150 kilos on my back, and I'm going down to the floor. And as I'm coming up, it's just like there was this massive kind of. It was almost like bubble wrap. Just went, and I felt it like something pop. I was like, ooh, that didn't feel good. So I put the weight back down, and it didn't hurt, like it wasn't a pain, but it just felt weird. It's like something just snapped basically, and my left leg was a bit loose, and I had a bit of a pain up inside where all the surrounding tissues were, and I was thinking, right. And at the time, my S&C coach Mike, he looked at me because he heard the noise, and he was like, "Are you all right?" And I didn't want to scare him, right? So I was like, "Yeah, it's fine." And I walked off, and I was thinking, shit, that wasn't good. That feels a bit weird. But it was what I thought. It was kind of like I went back to see the pelvic surgeon, and we done a X-ray, and you could see one of the screws that are holding the plate together just snapped. And he said, "Look, as long as you're not getting no irritation or pain from the screw itself, we can just leave it there." So currently, I've still got the plate with the snap screw in my pelvis.
That's why. I mean, most people at that point would go, "That's all right. That's it." Yeah. Like most sane people would go, "I'm done." But you're not. You're like, "Screw it. I'm going for this." No. So you continue to go, and kind of brings us to present of like where you're at, your training. One of the things I want to ask is during that time, obviously you had the mentality of I'm going to compete again, like because. One of the questions people might ask is like, why didn't you take, because you've been a natural athlete, right? Like, why didn't you just take a bunch of stuff to help with growth and healing and test and some of these stuff that have been shown to help with healing? Like, if you're just bones and skin, like, why not just take some tests to beef back up and do it? Like, was that always on your mind? Like, one, that's not me, that's not what I do, and two, I'm gonna eventually compete again?
Yeah, I mean. Do you know what it was? It was like I've always believed in my own ability, and even in this extreme circumstance, I kind of think, well, when things like this do happen, you should be allowed to take certain things to make you get back, right?
For sure.
Because you're not doing it for performance; you're doing it to help you, right?
Right.
And obviously, there's been cases with athletes in the past where they've got TUEs and whatever to be able to take certain substances to come back. But I just know how I am, like, and how kind of, it's almost like my path is, I have to stay on the true path because it'll be my luck that if I was to go down that route, which I never would, to get back faster, strictly just for injury purposes, could undo everything that I've stood for my whole career. And I've always been open about performance enhancing substances. I've always had a strong stance against it. And I thought, you know what? I could take the short route, but it's something that will come back to bite me. And even if I wasn't doing it for those reasons, the world isn't going to know that. So I can sleep peaceful at night time and know that I've never ever cut any corner. And even though it's been the hard route back, it's solid. My foundations are solid.
And that's key. All right, that's key for everything. So let's talk about a little bit about what you did the past couple days, right? So you've been having a little bit of pain. Do you want to talk about some of the pain you've been having when running?
Yeah. So I've been having, pretty much, it was before the nail snapped, the screw snapped, but even more so afterwards. I think where the pelvis has got a little bit more movement in it now, and those tissues and stuff suddenly caught that load when it snapped. Maybe it tugged on them or whatever, I don't know. But since then I've been in quite a lot of pain. Even in the build up to my first race back, I was like, that week was just hell. I didn't think I was even gonna be able to run. So I've tried everything that I can try: stretching, mobility, treatment, and it just isn't going. It's kind of like it's like a deep. The only way I can describe it is like if you got like a bad toothache, but going through my whole pelvis. So it's just horrible. So every time I've tried to run or run fast, I'll suffer the consequences 2 days after. I'll be in my bed, my central nervous system just shuts down, and I'm shaking. I'm like, Jesus, what's going on? So I've came out here to the centre originally to get stem cell treatment because I heard the massive benefits it has. But after talking to the doc, he didn't think it's something that actually I would have needed due to the area of the pain that I'm getting. So we went for PRP, and touch wood, it was 2 days ago, and I'm feeling positive. I mean, I've got a slight awareness still in the same area, but from the tests I've done today, running on the treadmill and bits and pieces, I think I'm on the right track. For
sure. Yeah, and you did 2 billion cells of PRP, which is awesome. And we're going to get you down here again to come do some more training and physio, because that's a big piece as well, right? Sure. Making sure you're staying limber and ready to rock. Now, I want to jump into some other stuff, but let's talk about, people are going to think you're absolutely insane. Like, they just heard this entire story of like this guy that was at this peak, literally got into this crazy car accident, shattered his pelvis and ultimately his entire body, skin and bones, works his way back up, screw pops off, still has pain. And what's the plan for this year? What's the plan? I know there's something big coming up in a couple months. What's the plan?
Well, the plan for this year is to try and make it back for the Olympic team in Tokyo, which, even when I say that, it sounds crazy, but I know it's possible. And people, it's funny because it's been like a reverse role now. Like, all my career and different circumstances, I've always said, I'm going to do this, and people have doubted me, and then I've done it, right? Now, everyone's like, you're going to do it, because I'm like, actually, this is the one goal that I've set, and I'm thinking, shit, this is a super tough, this is the hardest one so far.
Right.
So to come back from where I've been, where I still am, to make an Olympic team, yeah, it does sound crazy, but I think I'm a little bit tapped. I think most athletes are a little bit tapped. To get up every day, put yourself through pain, which is not guaranteed success, you got to be crazy anyway. So, right. But I believe it.
Right. Me too. Even just after watching you and seeing it, like, I would say, kind of like what I was talking about on the documentary the other day, is 99.9% of athletes that come in to our facility, I'm like, if I were to see someone and not know their mentality, I would say there's no shot. Like, there really is no shot what that person's been through. It's too short of a time. They've been out for too long. He's getting older. There's all these young bucks coming up. But, like, seeing your drive and mentality, I'm like, there's no, like, it's an absolute. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. Because I think we were talking a little bit about the hunger, right? Like, I think a lot of times, and this is a lesson for athletes, is you talk about, like, even we were talking about Conor McGregor and some of these guys. Well, a lot of times when they're at their peak, they lose that hunger. Tom Brady, some of these athletes, they lose the hunger, and then all of a sudden someone else who's just a little bit hungrier sneaks up. You've never lost that hunger. And I feel like now, like, you're like me coming off of this I'm coming off of a big experiment. I'm starving for food. You're starving for Tokyo, right? And that's powerful, man. There's a lot to be said about that. There's a lot. What's it going to take? What's like the next step? What do we have to look out for? Because there's going to be people that are watching this that are going to follow your journey. What's it like? What's from here? What's your next competition? Do you have to win something before you go to Tokyo? What's that look like?
Well, the season normally starts around about April, May. And when the season starts, then you've got a few months to get the qualifying time, which is, I think it's 10.115 or something, right? 10:15, which is super quick. Within that time period from the opening of the qualifying time to the national championships, I've then got to go on to compete at the national championships and place in, most athletes would say top 3, but I'm saying top 2 because, as we know, it's not.
if you place 3, it's probably not going to happen.
Right, exactly.
Right? You're not going to get picked.
So that's what I have to do. Currently, I'm going to go back to the Middle East, crack on with some training, and then it's just from now until I'd say the season starts, May, get training in, and then I'll open up with an open meet somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then from there until the national trials, it will just be trying to run a time. So I won't worry about what everyone else is doing. I just need to run fast. And the only day that I need to worry about placing will be at the national championships.
That's wild, man. I love it. Let's talk about some separate topics of like, one of the things, I didn't even know this before we met. You've done keto before, right? Talk a little bit about like what you experienced and when did you do keto kind of during your trial?
So this was at the end of after the Olympics, after 2012 Olympics. I moved up to a place called Loughborough University, and that's when I started with my new coach at the time, and he was heavy on the whole science thing behind diet and nutrition, which again most coaches in the UK typically aren't. It's kind of old school, do the training, whatever, eat what you want. And he was heavy on the keto stuff, and he was like, look, it wasn't for fat or anything like that, because we were all training hard, we were all lean and ripped anyway. For him it was more kind of hormone imbalances, energy, all the rest of it, recovery, and performance. So the first 2 weeks was hell for me. I felt like a nitty on the streets because I was just like, because I ate a lot of sugar. I love my chocolate. I love my carbs. And suddenly this was just absolute. It was gone from my diet. And I was like, So I was waking up and I was eating stuff like sea bass with avocado, boiled eggs, lean chicken, you know the typical stuff. And I was literally only drinking water. I wasn't drinking no sodas, no sugar. And he was extreme. Like some of the athletes, he was even talking about like the products we put on our skin, like some of the creams and deodorants, because they got plastics in and can mess with your kind of hormones and stuff. I didn't go that extreme, but the food was enough. But after that, I'd say after the first 2 weeks, my sleeping patterns were better. I was waking up like a light switch. I wasn't struggling. My training became better. My recovery was amazing. I was obviously lean as hell, but I just didn't need these crappy foods anymore. Right. I felt fresh. I had energy throughout the day, and it just felt so much better. And that was probably, apart from 2016 when I changed to 100 meters, that was my best season. That was the first year that I ran 10.1 seconds. I missed out on the World Championships final 200 meters by 2 places. It was amazing. And then going into 2014, I fell out of it, because obviously you have to be disciplined with it. Right. And I fell out of it, and I still had a decent season, but I've always said I want to try it again because the benefits for performance and energy and everything like that, it was amazing. For sure.
Did you supplement with electrolytes while you were doing it? Do you remember taking like sodium, potassium?
Yeah, I did. I mean, we always had some sort of electrolyte. So in the UK we have Diarylyte, which is a bit like Pedialyte over here. Yeah, so I use electrolytes and stuff still.
Do you still use that now?
Yeah. So I didn't cut anything like that.
That's awesome, man. And you really don't supplement with much. Like a lot of people would be like, oh, all these athletes, they must be taking everything under the sun. I asked you the other day, I'm like, we were going to the gym. I was like, hey, do you take any pre-workout or anything? You're like, I'm good with water. I'm like, what?
Yeah. I've been a big believer in kind of, especially when it comes to pre-workouts and stuff. I never wanted to become reliant on, whether it was a mental thing or whether it was actual physiological. I didn't want to rely on stuff. So I've never really taken any pre-workouts. The only supplements I take is your omega-3 fish oils, vitamin D, B12, creatine, and a decent protein.
Smart.
That's all I've really taken, to be honest. Oh, zinc and magnesium. That's it.
Dialed in, man.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the essentials, right? Let's talk about I want to shift gears and talk a little bit. I mean, this could relate to sports, but it's something different. Because you and I were talking, I was telling you about my trip to Costa Rica and ayahuasca, and you were like, oh, like we were talking about mushrooms and DMT, because like one of the main components of ayahuasca is DMT. But you've had experience with these as well. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your experience and share it with people of like some of the things. There's some points where it was really low, but most of it has been like, wow, like literally life changing.
Yeah. I mean, I experienced DMT, and it was, I mean, number one, I've never, just for the record, never been into any sort of drugs or anything like that. Right. But there's a difference. I think there's kind of medicines from the earth, which we know what these things are, and I've always been open to it. So when I tried it, I mean, a lot of the things I'd heard and seen on the internet, it was kind of, there was a documentary 2012 on Netflix called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, and it was narrated by Joe Rogan, and that kind of sparked my interest. And I like to research my own sort of research before I'd ever try anything. And after years of kind of looking this stuff up and seeing the documentary and other people's accounts of it, I was like, this is something that I need to kind of experience. And I experienced it the first time, and it's crazy because you'll hear this. A lot of people say when they experience it, they can't explain it. You can't really put it into words.
Right. Without sounding like a loon.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I've always been the guy that's the science guy. I don't believe it unless I can see proof. I need facts, right? So I've always kind of, even with religion, I've had debates with my religious friends, and I'm like, listen, you can't tell me this is the case because you don't know. I need to, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But the experience I had on there, I'm like, well, I don't believe my mind could come up with what I experienced because it was totally alien. And it just kind of puts everything into perspective. You come out of it and it's like, wow. Like you realize the things that you thought were important aren't really important. The things that are important are highlighted, and you kind of have this new appreciation for whether it be people around you or just life in general. It's like, I like jewelry, right? So I've got some nice jewelry and stuff like that. And when I came out of it, I was like, the concept of this jewelry was baffling to me. I was like, am I an idiot? Why have I got this? I was thinking, this is ridiculous. And obviously then you kind of everyday ego starts coming back on, and then you go back to normal or how you have conditioned yourself to being. But it's amazing. It's mind blowing. That's all I can say about it. Really, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, you get me excited. Now I'm like, I gotta try. Like, I gotta experience that solely. I mean, ayahuasca alone was amazing, and we talked a little bit about my experience with that. But I mean, a lot of times it was funny because I was talking with Aubrey Marcus the first time I had ever met him, and he was talking about religion and faith and just faith overall. And he's like, a lot of people down faith, and they're like, there's nothing, it's just us, there's nothing bigger. And he goes, you might think that until you've experienced plant medicine or some type of something like DMT, and you're like, you realize there's something much bigger than us out there.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Regardless of what it is,
it's
whatever your belief is, like something else is out there, and you experience this magical bliss of like you said, the small shit, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's the stuff that causes the most stress, the most anxiety, the most pain in people. Yeah. And you're like, wow. Like if people could only just see how simple life could really be, right?
Yeah, well, maybe you should give some DMT to Donald Trump, because he'd realize what a joke war and all the rest of it is. It's pointless. It's stupid. Like you really see what is going on, but it doesn't let you hold on to it. It's almost like, right, we're going to give you a taster, go back to your important life, which you think's important, and you're like, damn, it's like it's a lesson. It's like therapy, it's lessons, it's everything times infinity rolled into one. It's ridiculous.
I saw something when I was in Costa Rica. One of the people that I was there with shared with me something. They're like, imagine the world we would live in if all the leaders were to be in a room and literally just like all be taking ayahuasca or something and just be like, let's have a discussion. Like imagine like, because there's a lot. There's a lot of just deep rooted stuff. Like even with ayahuasca, and I'm sure this is the same with DMT. Like, there's a lot of deep-rooted stuff that people suppress that they need to come out to be like, wow, that's why I was being a prick, or wow, that's why I was so upset, or wow, the world's a lot better off. I talk a lot about perspective. I know you're a positive guy too. Like, people just take the wrong perspective and they're like, the world, you listen to the news. Like, I never have the news on, but we just have had the TV on just to have noise, and you literally listen to it and I'm like, no wonder people are miserable in their lives. Like everything, this killing, this bombing, this, and I'm like, people are so attractive to negativity, and I'm like, fuck, like this is insane, man.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's wild. So, would you ever, like, after you're done with your career or anything, do you ever see yourself doing ayahuasca? Or
hell yeah. Hell yeah. I think from what I've heard of it, and especially if it's kind of, it's like it's a softer, longer version of just smoking DMT on its own. That's like literally, you get on a ride and you blast off into a different dimension, and it's so ridiculous and unbelievable, and then you're back and you're like, you can't take none of it in. Whereas that's more like it's a journey, and like he said, it's therapy. I think it's therapy, so I'll definitely do it. I think, especially, I'm not really an emotional guy. Like, I don't outwardly show my emotions, and I spoke to a therapist after the crash and all the rest of it, because I know going through such a traumatic event, it's tough. I've had my dark days, but me as well, kind of knowing that you're sitting there paying for a therapist, it's a job for them. To me, it's not really, I'm not going to get what I need out speaking to somebody who's being paid. So it definitely would be something that in the future that I would love to experience, because I think everybody could do with that real spiritual therapy and healing.
Let me ask you a question, because that just sparked something. How much do you feel that pain that you're experiencing now, things that might be preventing you from like just getting out and absolutely dominating, how much of that do you think could be mental?
I'm not too sure. I think right now, kind of my mental side of things is, I think right now my mind's definitely leading my body. I think it's just the body that needs to follow. Physically, with the pain and stuff, there's no doubt in my mind that if I'm pain free and I can train, that I'll be back, because I've been to the pits right now. In the last 3 years, I've been down there, and I feel like I survived it and came out the other side, right? So I think that's my strength right now. So I don't think there's really any kind of mental aspects holding me back. I think I'm kind of, the mental side is just outweighing the physical right now.
Right.
And that's kind of like, yeah, I know you can mentally put your body through a lot of things that you physically didn't think you was capable of, but I've been doing that for the last 3 years, and this last thing it's one of the things you can't just power through. It's literally every stride I was taking, it's like someone was stabbing me deep, like making you weak. So if this is gone when I get back, yeah.
I 100% agree. I was actually talking with Jacob yesterday, and I said, there's a lot of people who would be in your position, and you look at them, and even as crazy as your experience has been, you look at them and go, well, there's a lot mentally that's holding them back. I was talking with Jacob, and I'm like, I've never seen someone as mentally as strong as James since like Tony Robbins. Like his ability to overcome pain. Like, and Tony's dealing with a lot of shit too. Yeah. Like that he doesn't outwardly talk about. Like, he's dealing with a lot. He's battling through aches and pains. The guy's been doing it for longer than like I've been alive. And he's battling it, but he doesn't let anyone see that on the outside. But he's so strong here that like he can go on. Normal person couldn't go on a stage and talk for 12 hours. He's so strong here. That's why I'm like, I was texting Jess. I'm like, I have no doubt. Like I was like, I'm ready to like book a flight to Tokyo now. Like I have no doubt about it whatsoever. So that, I mean, that's an important piece, man. A lot of people, and hopefully athletes, friends of yours, people that are watching this, like, I think there's a lot to be learned there of the power of the mind and what that can do for overall physiology, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about future plans, right? Because we're coming to the end here, and I want to know we're full focus is on Tokyo 2020. Afterwards, and something you have actually now with a friend of yours and business partner is a company called SprintFit. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what SprintFit is.
So SprintFit is basically a company that I came up with in 2015. I've always seen a place in the market for high level expertise in speed training. You look at the British Premier League, which is football, soccer in the US, and they have everything. They have the strategy, they have the money, they have S&C, they've got the management. But the one thing that they clearly have never had is real speed expertise. I see so many football players breaking down with speed or running related injuries, whether it be their hamstrings or quads or whatever it is. And sprinting is a super technical thing. Even within the sport of athletics, there's only a handful of coaches on the planet that really know how to coach speed. And most of the athletes, even some of the fastest guys in the world, they're good at taking instruction and being athletes, but it's hard to understand how to coach real speed. There's a formula to it. It's not guesswork, right? So I was like, what if I could, luckily enough, I was under one of these coaches from the end of 2012 until 2015. And what I learned and applied to my own sprinting, which made me improve massively, I thought, if I could break this down and apply it to team sports, not as hardcore as it would be for a sprint-specific athlete, because they're football players or rugby players or whatever they may be. They're not, the training, they just wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because they got their other training. But if I could come up with a program that I could implement into the training they're already doing, that kind of it puts that front side mechanics into their movement on the pitch. It gets their ankle stiffness up. It gets their ground contact times super fast. It gets them moving correctly and efficiently. And you tend to find with a lot of the faster football players, they're always getting injured. Right? And that's because they don't know how to handle and control their speed. It's the same with a super tuned sub 10-second runner. You'll see a lot of, especially in the UK, a lot of our top sprinters over the years, all you'll hear the commentators say, oh, he's injured again, so much talent. Because at that level, when you're moving at that speed, you need to be able to control the speed.
That's right.
With great speed comes great responsibility,
That's
right?
That's right.
So if you can teach this to kind of non-sprint specific athletes, not only are you going to get the whole team moving faster from the slowest to the fastest guy, but you're going to reduce the risk of running-induced injuries, which is going to save the club's money. It's going to save the well-being of the athletes who are injured and depressed on the bench, whatever it may be. And you're going to completely change the game. So currently in the UK, there isn't a go-to company. There's individuals that do bits and pieces, but there isn't a go-to company that is basically the go-to company for teams to get real sprint expertise, speed expertise.
That's awesome, man. I freaking love that. One of the things I want to ask, as we're wrapping this up, is a lot of times, you like you said, that could just apply to team sports. But any athlete, like speed, and they used to say speed kills, right? Like speed's everything. And so do you see that extending beyond just sprinters and football? Like I played baseball, but like my ability to get down the first base line, like that could mean the difference between like having a 300 batting average versus having like a 215 batting average, right? Like, isn't that so? Speed's everything. It's not just every
100%. I mean, initially it came from the football because that's what dominates our TV screens. But yeah, it's like you said, for baseball, for cricket, for anything that includes running, sprinting, it's gonna benefit them. So,
love it. And so, is your goal eventually to like help people, like bring? Obviously, you're only one person, and your partner's only one person. Is it eventually like really create a solid foundation with other people that you can build trust in, that learn your techniques, learn your program, because it's extremely specific and there's a reason behind it. It's not just like, oh, I'm a really fast guy and I'm going to teach other people how I run fast. No, like you've done this over your entire life and there's techniques and habits that you have that are unique. Is your goal to teach these people and get them equipped with it so they can go on and coach other teams? Is that eventually one of the
100%, yeah. I mean, currently, because like you said, it's only me and my partner in this company and there's only two of us. So when we do coach teams or players or whoever it may be, we have quite a low ceiling, right? So we can only take on X amount of work because there's two of us. Yeah. But my goal for sure is to kind of maybe give a pathway for retiring athletes in the sport. Because you got a lot of athletes that kind of retire from the sport and they don't know what to do. They're lost. They've been running their whole lives and they end up becoming personal trainers, which personal training is not bad, but a lot of them just fall into it because they only know health and fitness, right? Whereas if there was something out there which you can say, you know what, here's the pathway. I'm going to coach you the techniques of how to coach, because it's not just being able to run fast. You need to know how to. Athletes respond differently to different cues, right? Being able to communicate is the key thing, and yeah, kind of creating, like I said, a pathway for all these athletes to become sprint fit qualified coaches. You never know, it could be trademarks where they're going out to different clubs now. They're sprint fit qualified. They know the program. They know how to coach the drills. They know how to coach the techniques and deliver it to different clubs and individuals, whether they're working for me as sprint fit or whether they're doing their own thing. I think education is the key, man. And I think there's so much we can take from being Olympic sprinters or whatever it may be, and applying it to other sports and changing different sports completely. Love that.
What is, where can people find more on, is it just sprintfit.com?
Yeah. So you can email me at james@sprintfit.co.uk. If you have any other inquiries, admin@sprintfit.co.uk. We haven't got a website at the moment because it's not something that I really wanted to market. I think starting off in the big team sports, people will know about us, but there will be a landing page up soon and it'll be sprintfit.co.uk.
Love it. We'll put all that in the show notes too. Last couple things. What's your best or favorite competition you've ever run at so far?
Right, that's a tough question. I think my favorite competition that I've run out so far, it has to be honest, sorry. My best competition was the National Champs 2012 in the UK, Birmingham, because it was just ridiculous and there was so much pressure on my shoulders and I managed to come out on top and it was But my favourite competition was Monaco. And actually it sounds crazy because I came second to last in that race. But it was because I went to Monaco. I'd already qualified that year for the Olympic Games and I just took it all in. I was I was like, you know what, I might not get this moment again. So I enjoyed it. I stayed up. I was drinking some red wine with some friends and just taking it all in. And I'd already qualified, so it wasn't an important race.
Right.
But it was a great atmosphere, great stadium, great place.
Love that. That's awesome. What about, who's been one of your, and it doesn't need to be someone you're even close with, but who's been your favorite competitor? Like someone that you look at in the sport and you've run with and you're like, they've forced me to like bring my best game when you're running.
That's a good question, man. Yeah. So you know what? It's funny, yeah? Because he'll probably be shocked when I say it. But a guy called Harry Akins, he's one of our top 100-meter sprinters. And we've been on the teams together since like 2011. And it's just, I don't know, it's not been a massive rivalry between us because he was competing at 100 meters all the time and I always used to do the 200s. But for some reason, maybe I think it's the same for him, but when we'd get in a race, something would always come out at me. So when Harry was in a race, I would always run good because I didn't want Harry to beat me. He's probably listening to this now. It's all love. But and probably the vice versa for him. I think he's probably one of my best domestic competitors.
I love that. Who's been one of the best athletes you've seen in your sport come out and been like, damn, he is or she is an incredible runner?
All right, so there's two. One in mind is our current British and world champion, Dina Asher-Smith. She won the world champs last year. Ridiculous talent. She's like, you see normally these sprinter girls and they're stacked and they got traps and they're big. Dina looks like a small, pretty girl, and she just kills them. The other person is my boy, Christian Taylor. Yeah. He's a triple jumper, but he's a 3-time world and 2-time Olympic champion. And I lived with him for quite a bit. He trained with me in Loughborough, and I've never seen anybody as talented. The guy's a jumper, but he can transfer over and do 400s in 44 seconds. And from being in my industry and knowing that a lot of people at the top are doing things they shouldn't be doing, I've lived with Christian. Don't even take protein shake. He's like, he'll eat his dinner, have a chocolate brownie at the end of it. He's like, nope, I ain't taking. He'll take a multivitamin. Like, I can vouch for him. He's probably the most talented athlete on the planet at his level.
Unbelievable. That's awesome. Favorite meal? What's it like? If you're like, you know what? I just finished, just dominated in Tokyo 2020. You could have any meal you wanted. What would it be?
Something Italian. I love pasta. I love pasta. So
we had some good pasta.
Yeah. That seafood pasta was good, man. I love a good pasta meal. Probably something Italian.
That's awesome, man. Where can people find more about you? Like on Instagram, website, Facebook?
You can find me on Instagram, Jimmy Els, at Jimmy Els, Twitter, at Ellington100M. I'm not on Facebook. So either of those two. On Instagram, I've documented a lot of my journey coming back. So
yeah, it's awesome.
I was filming. I normally film my training. I don't do like little posty modeling pictures and all that stuff. I don't do that. Yeah, it's all my training. So you can find me on there.
Awesome, man. And this is the last question I ask every guest that's on the podcast. If everything were to end tomorrow, the world were to end, or it was your time, what legacy would you want people to remember you by?
Just that I'm a stand-up and honest guy. I think whether you hate me or love me, I don't think anybody out there could actually really say, oh, James chat shit, or he's not for his word. I think I've already got that, hopefully. So, yeah, James tries to stick to his word, and he's an honest guy. That's what I'd like to leave.
Love that, brother. Well, man, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. This has been absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to be there with you at Tokyo 2020. I have zero doubt in my mind you're going to crush it, man. And I'll be here every step of the way, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you. Let us know. Make sure you give James a follow. We will be back very, very soon with another episode of What the Fat. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.